Joining us now is Scott Horton. He is the director of the Libertarian Institute and the author of Provoked, and great friend of the show. It's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you both very much for having me this morning.
Absolutely. We got a lot of Iran stuff to get to with you, Scott. First and foremost is a new statement from the Ayatollah Khomeini. Let's go ahead and put it up there on the screen. He's spoken out for the very first time. There was some speculation as to whether he'd been disappeared basically this entire time. Nobody really knows where he is. Striking a defiant tone there, basically declaring victory over the U.S. regime in his statement. So it is interesting, at least for what some of the posturing is. We also have posturing from the Iranians with this idea that their nuclear program has not actually been all that severely degraded. This is now a massive fight here in Washington. As you and I are speaking right now, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is berating the media for reporting the previous intelligence estimate. And we also have the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, coming out backing up Donald Trump. We can put that up there on the screen. It says, new intelligence confirms that the POTUS has stated numerous times, Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed. If they choose to rebuild, they would have to rebuild all facilities entirely, which would take years to do so. She then goes after the propaganda media. So first, your reaction to that, and I understand you also wanted to expand a little bit on some comments you've made previously here on the show.
Yeah, I really, well, I'm ultimately still right anyway in the end, but I oversimplified a point when I was talking about uranium versus plutonium nukes and Iran's various potential routes to the bomb. And you guys' comment section called me out immediately, and correctly so. Okay. So the first thing was just a complete screw up where I just mixed up Fat Man and Little Boy. Little Boy was the Hiroshima bomb. Fat Man was the Nagasaki bomb, which wasn't, I did get this part right, was the plutonium implosion bomb. And that is almost universally the type of bomb that is miniaturized and married to missiles. What I overstated was I think I said that it was virtually impossible to make a uranium implosion bomb, which is not really right. That was oversimplified. The real point is because Iran has no plutonium route to the bomb, because never mind what's been bombed now, but they never had a reprocessing facility necessary to clean the impurities out of plutonium to use it for weapons fuel. So they didn't have that route to the bomb at all. And then their uranium route to the bomb, the presumption was that if they made a bomb, it would be a gun type nuke, because that would be the easiest and cheapest to make. That if they raced to a bomb, they could do that quickly. Whereas it is possible to make an implosion bomb out of uranium, but it's much more complicated and would require a lot more testing. And there have been a bunch of false accusations about them working on those implosion systems at Parchin, for example, which turned out to be a bunch of propaganda that was later debunked. But so my point still stands in that if they had broken out from the treaty and said, we're going to make nukes now, they could either race toward a gun type nuke, which is essentially undeliverable, or they could plod along and try to get an implosion type bomb and figure out how to make one and marry that to a missile. And I believe that must have been what the intelligence assessment had been referring to a couple of weeks ago, saying that it would take them up to 3 years to have that done if they were openly seeking one. So the point essentially still remained. It was just that I had screwed up, first of all, the names of the bombs we dropped on Truman dropped on Japan, which is a stupid error. And then secondly, I had essentially just overstated the limitations of a uranium bomb, and that essentially they would be forced to make a gun type nuke and would not have an implosion option available, which is not correct. It would take a lot more effort for them to do so. And it would give America and Israel a lot more time to launch an aggressive war against them in order to prevent them from getting that far. So that point essentially still stands. And I believe I made that same screw up on Piers Morgan and on the Jimmy Dore show. So this counts, I hope, as corrections for those two. I actually tried to invite myself back onto both to correct the same error, because I really hate being wrong about anything. People in my position, our position, trying to oppose these wars, we can't afford to be wrong. And I certainly was not trying to oversimplified to deceive anyone or anything, but I essentially did so. So I want to make sure that we get that straight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we appreciate your commitment to that kind of precision, Scott. It's part of what gives you so much credibility here. So what do you make of the battle over the intelligence assessment of how badly damaged these nuclear facilities ultimately were?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Not in a real like benefit of the doubt sense, but just my feeling is I think Trump is probably right that the damage was, what they were hoping to get. And part of that is just because I know of the precision, their ability that they've had for many years to be able to drop a missile right down a chimney, fly it in a window. It's been this way since Iraq War I. And for them to drop a dozen or more, 14, I guess it was, they said, a 30,000 pound shape charge. These charges are meant to blast straight down, and they're 30,000 pounds, and then they drop them over and over and over down the same few holes. I imagine they can get quite a bit of damage done down there. And now their question was whether they had destroyed, all the buried centrifuge facilities and so forth. I'm really not sure about that, obviously. But Seymour Hersh had a thing where his sources are telling him that they actually didn't think that they could reach all the centrifuge facilities down there. And that wasn't what they were trying to do. Instead, they decided that they would just essentially hit every entrance and every air shaft and every tunnel available, and to just seal the place off. Anybody down there be buried alive, and no one on the surface ever be able to get down there again. And the one option would be that they would be able to do, a major mine shaft type operation like they did this rescue mission that he refers to years ago, I think in Peru or South Africa or something, where these guys were buried very deep down for a very long time, and they did get down there. But then we could bomb them when they're in the middle of trying that would essentially be the threat, right? So that sounds at least credible to me, that they know what they're doing. We're talking about the U.S. Air Force. Can they put firepower on a target and collapse a tunnel? Sure they can. So, and then they did virtually, I believe, destroy everything of real value at Isfahan, which is where they had the conversion facilities where you take the uranium ore, turn it to yellow cake, and then refine that or convert that, as they call it, to uranium hexafluoride gas, which you need to enrich up to higher and higher percentages of U-235. Then you have to convert it back into metal again. And they apparently destroyed all of that. And then, by the way, so there's this guy, David Albright, has a group called ISIS, which he called it that before the Islamic State, guys. But he's kind of a very pro-Israel simp. I don't really like him, but I do respect his technical expertise. And his group has put out a pretty thorough report from commercial satellite pictures that they got, where they run through Fordo, Isfahan, Natanz, and a couple others. Apparently there's been severe damage done at Natanz as well. And I think Trump's crowing because the Air Force is telling him we did it. And and by the way, this is announced yesterday that they're going to have talks next week. And it seems like Trump's position is going to be, look, man, I destroyed virtually your entire program. No point in rebuilding it because I'll just bomb it again. So just don't. And then, as he put it yesterday, I don't even think we need a new nuclear deal. We're just going to go on. They're just going to not have a nuclear program anymore. And I'm not really sure about that. The Ayatollah obviously has a huge incentive to be defiant, as he was in that speech. There's probably a likelihood that it's true, as they bragged, that they already have another secret facility up and running.
Right.
Or at least they're working on getting it. And I've been warning all along, I'd be happy to be wrong about this. I don't care. But the anti-war forces in America have warned all along that the threat, of course, is that if we attack them, then they'll make a nuke. Whereas this whole time they had acquired essentially a latent deterrent instead of going as far as having an actual nuclear weapon. So flip a coin. I guess we'll see how it works out.
Right. So that's the thing, Scott. Everybody's trying to parse this language. And if you really do look at it precisely, like for example, we can put the next one up there. This is from the CIA director. The CIA director, John Ratcliffe, released a statement. CIA can confirm a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has, quote, been severely damaged by the recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence, etc. But the word severely damaged is what really struck to me because look, I know that Trump and the politicians are rhetorically, but obliteration to me means basically non-existent, whereas severely damaged is more in the realm of, well, it's technically repairable, especially when you pile on top the secret facilities, like you said. I also do believe that there's a lot of intra-governmental leaking going on, because what's the incentive of somebody leaking saying that the strike wasn't all that credible? Well, we got to go back and we got to go to do it again, right? And so then there's a lot of politicization here of the intelligence as well. So parsing those two things, you still think, like you said, that that secret facility is technically a possibility, but it may not necessarily be months as that initial assessment said.
Yeah, man, there's so much that we just don't know yet. But and I think the most important variable in it all is the Ayatollah's reaction. Either we just made him mad, and now, and plus all the guys around him too, they're all just going to be demanding, further, nuclear development. We'll just build a new Isfahan. We'll just build a new Natanz. We'll just do whatever we have to do to keep going. Or is it the case that, hey, the United States of America called his bluff, and ultimately their latent nuclear deterrent wasn't enough to stop us, and their mid-range missile deterrent wasn't enough, and they didn't dare, right? They shot, and this is such an important point too. This is the madman Ayatollah who only wants to bring on the apocalypse. He's willing to lose his whole nation in a first strike against Israel. They've told us for 25 years here or something like that. But now he did the same thing that Trump did after he killed Soleimani. And previous to that, in the summer of 19, when they had their back and forth over Katib al-Hezbollah in Iraq, which is a Shiite militia backed by Iran there, and back and forth between them and Americans. They shot down the drone, I believe it was in the summer of 19. And then it was after Soleimani in the beginning of 20, they bombed the empty corner of an American base in Iraqi Kurdistan, which did give guys some concussions and things. It wasn't completely harmless, but it was obviously meant to be essentially a symbolic response. The same thing that they did when the Israelis killed the Hamas leader in Tehran in a bombing. And then they also had struck the Iranian consulate in Syria and killed important Iranian officials there. They launched that missile salvo at Israel, but they announced it beforehand and said, essentially get all of your defenses ready. This is because the Ayatollah, I'm sure it'd be terrible to live there. But he is essentially cautious in foreign policy because, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I've been saying this for a very long time. If you're the Ayatollah, what are you going to do with a problem like the USA? Right? America has an incredibly powerful Air Force. Even with conventional weapons, we could obliterate Iran's cities and they couldn't do nothing to us. They couldn't sail a boat within 1,000 miles of our shores ever. Right? So what's he going to do? Just get into a brawl with Donald Trump and lose so badly when he could try to calm it down? And so what did he do? He launched an attack at an American base in Iraq, and an American base, our most important base at Qatar, CENTCOM headquarters at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. And as Trump said in a tweet, thank you very much for the prior warning that you're going to launch this symbolic attack and let us, shoot it down and this kind of thing. So the Ayatollah there was telegraphing very obviously, I do not want to fight you. Please, let's call this off. So
it's almost like
what he's going to do now, and he's an old man
actors.
too. He could drop dead tomorrow.
It's almost like they're rational actors and not the end time psychopaths that we've been sold on who are ready to nuke Kansas the moment that they have the opportunity, or Tel Aviv for that matter. Let's talk a little bit about the other nation state involved in this conflict. That would be Israel. Guys, if you could put C5 up on the screen, this is, the axis between the American neocons and also the Israelis. So you've got Mark Levin here praising Netanyahu for his new speech, saying Israelis have never been more united. The Arab world has never been more appreciative. Netanyahu is a truly remarkable leader, and this is with regards to speech where Netanyahu says we must complete the campaign against the Iranian axis, defeat Hamas, bring about the release of all of our hostages, and he says in there as well, we have no intention of taking our foot off the gas. We must complete the campaign against the Iranian axis. At the same time, guys, if you could put C3B up on the screen. This was a truth from Trump, which I will spare you reading all of this way too long thing. But in essence here, he is praising Bibi Netanyahu lavishly and calling for the corruption charges which he's been facing inside of Israel, to be dropped. He says he's been going through this horror show with regard to these corruption charges since May of 2020. Unheard of. This is the first time a sitting Israeli prime minister has ever been on trial, and calls them politically motivated. So in any case, what do you make of how the Israelis are assessing this moment, and what do you think is going on here with this Trump truth in praise of Netanyahu?
Well, I think everything's coming up Likud, right? I mean, they have been, largely successful in the annihilation of the society of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The settlers are on the move, expanding in the West Bank. They've taken all the territory up to the Litani River in southern Lebanon and taken a major chunk out of Syria. They've completed, with the help of the Turks, the al-Qaeda revolution and takeover of Syria and the end of the Ba'athist regime there, which was led by Alawites who were close to the Shiites and close to Iran. They, through the pager attack and aerial attacks, they have severely crippled Hezbollah as well as killed their leader, Nasrallah. They got America to come in and help them to severely cripple, at the very least, Iran's nuclear program. We don't know exactly, as we've been talking about, how that's going to play out, what the consequences of that'll be. Mm-hmm. They still have the Houthis, and the Houthis are hard to kill. Barack Obama and Donald Trump already tried to kill them, and Joe Biden a little bit for about 8 years there, and didn't win anything. All they did was, war's the health of the state unless you lose, and in this case, they didn't lose. And so the people of Yemen are more united around their government now than probably ever before, under what the academics call the rally around the flag effect. I know a reporter that I interviewed years ago, or I interviewed him a ton of times, Nasser Arabi from Sana'a, said, "Oh, we're all Houthis now." Not that they are, but the same way Americans supported George W. Bush. Somebody attacks us, then it's us versus you, if that's how it is. And as he put it to me, he said, well, George Bush is from Texas, right? But when he's the president of the country, he's not just a Texan, he's the president of the country, and he's respected as such by the people of the whole country, not just the Texans, of course. So it's the same thing when the Shiites from the Sada province are in charge. You attack the country, you attack the country. And now there are splits, and, in the South, they have the STC and all that. But overall, the Houthis have proven to be a very difficult target to take out from the air. And who's going to send in ground troops there? And this goes back to our hypothetical about Iran, which I sort of trailed off instead of wrapping up, that if they decide to double down on their nuclear program, then we go back to what Netanyahu said the other day, which is, what would solve this problem permanently? Killing the Ayatollah and having a regime change there one way or the other, which they may even be able to accomplish by air if they have real intelligence. Trump threatened, I know exactly where you are. I could kill you right now if I wanted to, the other day, a week ago. And so by their logic, if they're right, if even the guys, Mark Dubowitz from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies was saying, well, now that Israel started this war, America better go in there with their big bunker busters and fish it, or else now they're going to break out toward a nuke. Exactly. Well, they still might now try to break out toward a nuke, in which case the logic is that the problem isn't solved yet. We got to keep killing mullahs until the problem is solved, until we can parachute in a monarch, or we'll have al-Qaeda in Iraq take over in Iran too, since they've done such a great job in Syria for us.
Hey, listen, Donald Trump literally shaking the guy's hand It's unbelievable. Scott,
he has a very strong past. Trump said, look it up. He told Frontline, he's like, I killed American soldiers in Mosul and Ramadi. That's the strong past that Trump's referring to.
Right, but we got to take out the Ayatollah because American soldiers were.
And this goes the whole thing. Yeah. Israel's enemies are the Shiites. But it was not Hezbollah that knocked our towers down. I'm sorry I'm such a broken record on this, but this is all treason because the Likud hates Iran.
Right.
But America could have normalized relations with Iran back in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. Hell, Ronald Reagan was selling them missiles in the mid-1980s. After Beirut, within a couple of years, he's selling them missiles. Zbigniew Brzezinski and Alexander Haig wanted to normalize relations in 1993. The Ayatollah came begging George W. Bush to get along with the Golden Offer in 2002. So you guys hate the Taliban? You guys hate Saddam Hussein? You guys hate al-Qaeda? Let's work together.
Yeah.
And the neoconservatives said no, because Israel hates the Shiites more. Scott, and somehow that matters more than who hit the Pentagon.
Let me ask you one last question here, which is the Iranians are, trying to claim and assert some sort of victory and project that they effectively were able to affect enough damage inside of Israel that Israel felt the need to accept this ceasefire, and there was reporting about Israel running low on interceptors. And I think the other way they're claiming victory is basically you all wanted to destroy us and collapse the government, and the government is still here, and our nation is still here. So what do you make of, their sort of celebration and their claiming of a victory in these circumstances?
Well, in the first case there may be some truth to that they still have missiles in reserve, and Israel's running out of Sparrows and Iron Domes and Patriots and whatever that they had to shoot them down with. There may be some truth to that. I'm sure there was some pressure on the Israelis on their side of it, because a lot more missiles did get through than they thought. As far as the second part, I think that's sort of propaganda, trying to portray a little bit of a position of strength there, domestically, trying to save a little bit of face there. But I think it was Donald Trump that said, we're calling a halt here, short of regime change. I think if he had given Netanyahu permission to keep going, or had shared the intelligence, this is where we think the Ayatollah is, go ahead and get him, then they absolutely could go that far. Anybody could probably just picture, just from memory, B-52s over North Vietnam, just what they call carpet bombing, just pouring dumb bombs out of the belly of those gigantic heavy bomber planes that we have. And there's pictures, people have seen profile pictures of B-2s doing the same, but the B-52s especially, America could really devastate. It was credible when he ordered, Donald Trump, don't forget, ordered the evacuation of Tehran.
Yeah.
And the implication, was like, geez, I don't think he's going to nuke them, but what is he going to do? Like, what is even the implication there? And it turned out the implication, which was the most minimal one, was just, he was going to encourage the Israelis to keep hitting government targets in that city. They weren't going for terror bombing of the neighborhoods on the vast scale that they could. But boy, even that threat sure sounded like it and was going very far here. So I would expect for the population and the political establishment inside Iran to be more radicalized and more defiant than ever. It's only natural, really, unless the Ayatollah just slams his fist down, says, no, I'm in charge here. And I say, boy, we better be conciliatory now because of our position of weakness, which I think is doubtful, right? But that's what it would take. Yeah. It would take him shouting at everybody else to shut up. I'm the one deciding, and I've decided that we're going to have to play a little bit meek in the face of this madman or whatever. But I don't know how anyone could fairly expect that to be the result of this, quite frankly.
We'll see. Scott, thank you so much for joining us, man. We appreciate your analysis.
Great to see you, Scott.
Thank you both so much. Yeah, really appreciate you.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.